So, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Dr. Nikol Alexander-Floyd, and I am an associate professor of political science at Rutgers University and a proud member of the Rutgers AAUP-AFT Executive Council. Rutgers AAUP-AFT is a union that represents more than 5,000 full-time faculty, graduate workers, postdoctoral researchers, and others at Rutgers University. I'm excited to be here today because we are talking about an historic pay equity suit here at the university. It is historic because more than 50 years ago, a half century, the late US Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and several of her colleagues won a settlement in a pay equity lawsuit filed at Rutgers University, Newark. Here we are today in a new century in 2020, and we are still fighting for equity and justice. This is also an historic suit because it will support equity and justice for all workers. As we know, Rutgers is the state university of New Jersey. This lawsuit will impact not only workers here at Rutgers, but indeed across the state. What happens here will impact what happens at other universities. What happens here will impact the public sector, the private sector, and as we know, the state of New Jersey is a bellwether state. We have always been revolutionary, and we know that this will provide important precedent so that other workers can get their just due in terms of compensation. So we're going to have several speakers here today. We're going to listen to each of those, and then we'll open things up for questions. Our first speaker here today needs no introduction for many people. She is none other than Loretta Weinberg, the majority leader of the New Jersey Senate. Senator Weinberg has devoted herself to public service for 45 years, nearly 30 of them in the state legislature, starting in the General Assembly in 1992 and moving to the Senate in 2005. She is the prime sponsor of the Diane B. Allen Equal Pay Act, universally acknowledged as the strongest state law protecting against salary discrimination. Former Governor Chris Christie blocked the legislation repeatedly, but Governor Phil Murphy signed the Equal Pay Act into law as his first legislative act in April 2018. Senator Weinberg, we are so honored to have you here on today to speak with us about this historic case.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me and for pointing out that we do have what is considered the strongest pay equity law in the nation. So it's kind of with mixed feelings that I am appearing at this press conference. First, you did say it was one of the first bills that Governor Murphy signed, as it was when President Obama signed the Lilly Ledbetter Act as one of his first actions when he first became president, and Lilly Ledbetter was with us at Governor Murphy's signing. So it is with pride in that law that I come here today, and at the same time, with a little bit of chagrin and embarrassment that I am at the State University of the state of New Jersey, the home of the Center for American Women in Politics, whom I go to as a resource on so many issues affecting women and elected office, to the home of the Women Work Resource Center, which we go to so often as a resource on bills like this, that I am at Rutgers University, the state university, to laud the professors, two of whom have the distinct title of distinguished professor, who have the ability, the integrity, and the support to stand up and speak out on issues about pay equity in our higher education system. So we should be the leader in this area. We in the state of New Jersey are already the leader in the area in terms of the law we've provided. And now our state university should be a leader in the area. I know we have a comparatively new president with Dr. Holloway, and I am hoping, I know how COVID has distracted everybody over the last number of months, including his having to deal with this when he came in as new president. But I'm hoping that this press conference will help call attention to the fact that we need his help in straightening out, in following the program that Rutgers originally signed with the professional union, and that we are able to move ahead to make sure that this kind of inequity doesn't exist in the State University of New Jersey. So to the professors who are going to follow me, to the professors who have stood up and spoken out, thank you for your courage and your integrity. And I am here to support you in whatever way I can. So thank you for including me, and I look forward to hearing them speak.
Thank you so much, Majority Leader Weinberg. Our next speaker is one of the courageous plaintiffs in this lawsuit, and it is none other than Dr. Nancy Wolff. Nancy Wolff is a distinguished professor, one of the ones that Majority Leader Weinberg mentioned, a distinguished professor in the Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. And if you don't know, the Blaustein School is one of the, if not the top public policy institution in the country. She is also director of the Blaustein Center for Survey Research with 29 years of teaching at Rutgers University. She is the author of over 100 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. I do encourage you to read the longer statement that she has available so that you can get a glimpse of the really rich contributions that Professor Wolff has made to the university, to the state, and indeed to the country. Professor Wolff, thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you very, very much for that warm welcome. And thank you so much, Senator Weinberg, for endorsing our cause and for advancing the law that allows us to stand here today on behalf of ourselves, as well as other women at Rutgers who are in similar situations. So let me first say good afternoon to everyone. I am a distinguished professor in the Edward J. Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. For nearly 30 years, I've been advancing the interests and values of Rutgers University through exemplary teaching, research, and service. But during much of that time, Rutgers University has consistently and substantially paid me less than my male peers who are doing comparable work. In good faith, nearly a year ago, I submitted an application to the Rutgers Pay Equity Program, but like all other faculty who submitted such applications, I have yet to receive a response. By continuing to pay me and other applicants unequally, Rutgers is violating New Jersey's far-reaching Pay Equity Act. Moreover, being treated unfairly in terms of compensation and promotion is a form of harm that undermines our overall wellness and economic security. These are the real collateral consequences of pay inequity. and they are the consequences that motivated me and 4 other plaintiffs to sue Rutgers for violating New Jersey's Pay Equity Act. We, the plaintiffs of the lawsuit, have played by the rules for decades and asked respectfully and repeatedly to be compensated fairly to our male peers. When these steps failed, we reluctantly but resolutely invoked the law. We are following in the footsteps of the great late US Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, along with female colleagues at Rutgers Newark, filed a lawsuit over 5 decades ago against the university for pay inequity. They won. It is truly unfortunate that the 5 of us are fighting the same fight all over again. This Groundhog Day is not a fantasy or a comedy. It is a persistent reality of economic injustice. The practice of pay inequity at Rutgers has persisted for well over half a century. With the passage of the Diane B. Allen Pay Equity Act, the practice of paying any group in a protected class less for substantially similar work is now unlawful in New Jersey. And the pay equity program negotiated by the Rutgers chapter of the AAUP-AFT in June of 2019 provides a mechanism for relief in lieu of suing the university under New Jersey's Pay Equity Act. But this is not enough. Adjusting the salaries of those who are currently paid less for doing comparable work simply corrects for past compensation discrimination. It does not, however, prevent future pay inequity because the historical process that is creating salary differentials has not been fixed. To solve this problem once and for all requires institutional reform. We, faculty and administration together, need to create a formal, structured process that actively addresses and monitors the cause of salary inequities among faculty. We need to change the culture and the behavior within the culture so that only merit guides compensation and promotion decisions. The goal here is simply equal pay for equal work so that faculty, women and men alike, are compensated in accordance with the value that we contribute to the academic excellence of Rutgers. The goal is consistent with what the union negotiated in 2019 and with the pay equity law passed in New Jersey in 2018. Rutgers has the potential, as Senator Weinberg says, to become a national leader in the area of faculty pay equity. We have the know-how, the motivation, and a state law that, when combined together, can both correct and prevent unwarranted pay differentials among faculty doing substantially similar work. It is my hope that President Holloway will earn Rutgers a title of distinction by acting proactively and intentionally to support a comprehensive, appropriately financed, and systemic response to faculty pay inequity. Moreover, that he will be motivated by principles to root out the cause of pay inequity and not be satisfied with simply treating its symptoms during times of legal crisis. I am hopeful that the Holloway administration will advance its espoused values and principles in ways that will demonstrate in earnest, a zero tolerance for pay inequity at Rutgers now and forever. This is my hope for us, for the university, and for the state. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Professor Wolff. Our final speaker is Dr. Deepa Kumar. As immediate past president of Rutgers AAUP-AFT, she enacted visionary leadership in pursuing equity, security, and dignity for all workers. She is a prolific researcher. She is a public intellectual. She is a professor of journalism and media studies in the School of Communication and Information. And she has been working at Rutgers for 16 years. She is a change agent. I could go on and on about the many contributions that she has made to Rutgers University, and to the broader community. We're very happy to have you here, Professor Kumar.
Thank you so much, Nikol, for that kind introduction. I'm also extremely grateful to Senator Loretta Weinberg for both being the powerhouse behind the Equal Pay Act passed in 2018 and for her support for the 5 of us who are part of this lawsuit to win pay equity. Senator Weinberg has noted in previous communications about this lawsuit and what motivated her, that she has wanted to address long-term historic inequities in pay. The women of New Jersey earn 82 cents to the man's dollar. And I suspect that that figure is even lower for women of color because that is how hierarchy works. It is unjust and unfair for both white women and women of color to earn less than their male counterparts for doing substantially similar work.
That's right.
5 of us who are part of this lawsuit want to strike a blow against this injustice. This is really, in my opinion, what is at stake in this lawsuit. I understand that this is one of the first cases that has gone to court under the Equal Pay Act, and that the outcome will set a precedent for all workers in New Jersey. It is vital, as Nancy has mentioned, to have pioneering laws that make it illegal to pay less for substantially similar work. And as Nikol mentioned, this is indeed a precedent-setting bill. Now, of course, we are involved in the hard work of trying to make that law a reality in the lives of all the people who work in this diverse and multiracial state of New Jersey. At Rutgers, we were inspired by the Equal Pay Act because it gave wings to our fight for equal pay at this university. Back in 2017, when I was the president of the union, our union, Rutgers AAUP-AFT, I had asked an economics professor who specializes in pay equity issues to conduct a study of pay equity practices at Rutgers. And guess what? We found systematic pay differences along the lines of gender. And like you, Senator Weinberg, I was determined to set this injustice right, and our union adopted an overall platform of gender and race equity, which includes many dimensions, including pay equity. And Governor Phil Murphy, by the way, sent us a letter of support endorsing our proposals.
Yes, he did.
The members of this union fought to create a process to address pay inequities, and on the brink of a strike, the previous Bachi administration agreed to our proposal. However, as has been mentioned before, to date, not a single case of pay inequity has been addressed. All of us put in our applications, some more than a year ago, and we have been waiting to no avail. I will use the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Justice too long delayed is justice denied." And I want to be clear, the problem of pay inequity didn't begin last year when we put in our applications, but has been going on for decades. And each of us has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because we have not been paid what we should have been. And this is, of course, why we are part of this lawsuit, but this is bigger than us. This is important to us as faculty of Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey. Rutgers is a top-notch university with excellent faculty, and we want to keep it that way. We've come forward to be part of this lawsuit so that others can be spared the time, energy, and the financial burden. We want our example to shed a spotlight on the injustices at Rutgers so that our new president, Jonathan Holloway, who is committed to equity, can work to create a process where all faculty, and particularly faculty in historically oppressed groups, are treated with the respect they deserve and are paid a fair salary. The example of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been mentioned. I know I can speak for all of us as plaintiffs when I say that we have come forward so that in another 20 to 30 years, another group of women does not have to fight this fight all over again and relitigate this injustice. I believe that Rutgers, under President Holloway's leadership, can set an important precedent, as others have said, not only in the state of New Jersey, but for institutions of higher education all over the country. Thank you for giving me this time to speak.
Thank you so very much, Professor Kumar. And again, thank you, Senate Majority Leader Weinberg and Professor Wolff, and again, Professor Kumar as well. We are resolute. We are committed to pursuing justice and equity in this lawsuit. You have been given a chance to ask questions, members of the media, so that we can clarify any issues or questions that you have. While we are continuing to allow for people to formulate their questions, I would like to ask a question to the panelists, and we also have others available to chime in that I'm sure is on many people's minds. How can we advocate for pay equity, albeit an important objective, in the midst of a pandemic, one that has really impacted our community and the nation economically? How do we account for this in terms of the Rutgers budget and those kinds of fiscal concerns? I'm sure that's a question that's on the minds of many people.
Yeah, well, let me chime in here, if I can, from state legislator point of view. Obviously, the pandemic has overtaken so much else, but as we are doing this press conference on Zoom, the legislature has found ways through Zoom. I'm going to be participating in a legislative regular committee meeting this afternoon, so the business of government can carry on. But this lawsuit is so important, and as both Professor Wolff and Professor Kumar pointed out, 50 years ago we were talking about this. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we passed a law to help outlaw this kind of inequity. Let me just add a footnote. When you talk, and I think Professor Kumar talked about being underpaid over the years by hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is also reflective not only in the salary or in the take-home pay, but it's reflective in the kind of pension, retirement income that you have when you retire, in the lifestyle that you have while you are working. There are so many things that can't just be attributed to the lesser dollars that you're being paid. But the only way we can keep things moving along is by taking an action. I think you were all very responsible by trying to work out a program with Rutgers administration. And now to have that kind of drag on for a year with no response, you're taking the action which will hopefully provide equity under the law. And while you're doing it, keeps a spotlight on where these inequities are still existing. And they run the gamut from academics like those of you represented here to some of the first line workers that we cherish and celebrate in today's pandemic. So it's important that you're standing up, and how we can, to answer your question, how can we keep it going is by what you're doing here today. And hopefully with a comparatively new administration under Dr. Holloway, there will be some guarantees that we don't have to conjure up the spirit of the Supreme Court Justice, or of Lilly Ledbetter, or of Diane B. Allen, or Loretta Weinberg, or any of the others gathered around here 50
Yes.
years from now, because it will just be considered the way we do business.
Exactly. Exactly. I thank you so much, Senator Weinberg. We have a couple of questions that have come in. Before I get to those, Professor Kumar, do you want to say anything more about the fiscal issue?
I'm sorry, I was actually bumped off because of a technical issue, and now I can't put my video back on again. So what I do want to say is that the union has worked hard to study the finances of the university, and the budget and economic committee of the union has found that, in fact, the university is not in very dire financial conditions and has about $700 million in unrestricted reserves. And so
That's right.
all of these factors need to be considered. And I'll just say that the law doesn't stop because there is a pandemic. What people like Weinberg have done holds for all time. And I think this is a principle that is based on justice and equity, and that principle should hold through all times.
Thank you so much, Professor Kumar. We have a question from Nikita Buryukov, and it is directed concerning the number of people who are going to be affected. And she asks, is there an estimate for how many women professors this issue affects statewide?
I don't have those figures, but can I just jump in with, essentially other unionized higher ed universities have contacted us and have been in touch to learn from our example of how we have accomplished this pay equity process. They too are in the process of doing the kind of study that we did back in 2017. In order to pass similar kinds of protections for women faculty and faculty of color and other protected classes. So I don't know if there are figures at this point, but certainly, given that in New Jersey as a whole, women are paid 82 cents to the male dollar, I don't know why universities would be an exception to that general rule.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to try to jump in, Nikol, if I could.
Sure.
Okay. I think that it's the fact that we can't answer that question is indicative of the fact how little attention this issue has gotten at the administrative level at Rutgers. This is the fact that we cannot answer this question with hard facts is really an embarrassment for an academic institution. We should be empirically based. We should be scientifically driven. And the fact that we aren't is truly an embarrassment. I will say that this Friday, we will be fielding a survey here amongst the 6,000 members of AAUP-AFT faculty, both tenure and non-tenured. and ask them about their experiences with pay inequity. So we are going to try to get that information so we can understand how men and women are experiencing this issue. So hopefully, based on that, we'll at least have some factual information. But we should, on a regular basis, have broad-based pay equity analyses done at the administrative level. We should have transparent reports annually describing exactly what the experience is here at Rutgers, as well as at other universities across the state, so that we can put our finger on the pulse, so that we know what is happening and what kind of interventions are needed. I also just want to harken back to the question that you asked initially. I read the history of the case with Ruth Bader Ginsburg back 50 years ago. And it was quite interesting that the university's argument for why they couldn't respond to that group of women was also fiscal. It was financial. So it's not a matter, we can always use a fiscal argument to say that we can't do this, but it's really saying that you don't identify this as a priority, that the value of paying women equally is not valued enough at the university to use its scarce resources to put them in a way that puts women and men on the same playing field. And that says something about Rutgers' values that I hope are not true today, because the fact that we can't answer factual questions, the fact that we don't, that we're using financial arguments against doing the right thing is telling us more about our values and principles than I think are consistent with what I think the Holloway administration is saying when they're outward facing.
Thank you so much. Very well put, Professor Wolff. And of course, it speaks volumes as well that in the short time that this provision has been part of the contract, 130 people have already filed cases that are waiting to be answered. Okay, we're going to go now to Nikita Buryokov, who will ask another question live directed to Senate Majority Leader Weinberg.
I think you'll have to unmute yourself.
Sure. So, Senator, I'm just wondering if you would consider stronger legislative action if the university continues to use public funds to pay for its litigation costs.
Well, I think we have a pretty strong law under which they are filing their lawsuit. So I think I will use the bully pulpit, though, that I'm using by being here today and resisting the urge to make a few snarky comments when Professor Wolff talked about evening the playing field, that I suggested if everybody became kickers on the football team, they might not have any problems with collecting the kind of pay they deserve. So, when we talk about how the resources of the university are invested, they should be invested in the academic side of the university as well as in the sports side. And they should be invested in the good offices to make sure that this university stands up for what we believe in New Jersey, starting with the governor's office, going through the administration in the state university of the state of New Jersey, and that is equity and inclusion. So I don't think we're going to need any more laws, but we might need a few more spotlights and a few more press conferences like this.
Thank you so much, Senator Weinberg. You're so feisty and you're so laser sharp. I'm so grateful that you are our leader. We're going to take one final question.
I think Todd Wolfson would like you to read it out, if that'd be possible.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and read this question. Todd Wolfson is our current president of Rutgers AAUP-AFT and a true community builder for workers and others, not only on campus, but in the broader public here in the state. And Todd, Professor Wolfson has a question for Senator Weinberg. New Jersey is a role model with one of the strongest Equal Pay Act laws in the country. How can Rutgers University be a role model for New Jersey and for public universities on equal pay for women and people of color?
You know, I think it's because you should have the science that Professor Wolff referred to be able to be a resource to the wider New Jersey community on an issue like this. This
Okay.
morning, I actually participated in a Zoom meeting with women senior leaders of one of the big corporations in the state of New Jersey. And that was one of the issues they brought up in terms of pay equity. How do they really know what's going on in their corporation? So Rutgers, in first of all, negotiating this kind of groundbreaking program to actually understand a little bit about pay equity here, has already become a leader. So you should be the resource that the kinds of companies I met with this morning and other places in the state of New Jersey can turn to help alleviate this problem in the future. We have years to catch up with. There's no denial. I mean, when I first got involved with this, God knows how many years ago, we were talking about 79 cents on the dollar that women are being paid, or 75 cents. I don't remember what the exact number was, but we've got a lot of ground to catch up with. We've set up the framework, and now it is up to business and, most important, our state university to become the leaders and not the followers, to set the standards, hopefully outside of future court action, and become the place we go to figure out how to do it in other places.
That's so well said, Senator Weinberg. We have to model expected behavior and what can happen across the country once that occurs. We're going to have a couple of brief announcements to the media by Alan Mass, and then we'll wrap up.
May I just say something very quickly?
Yes, Professor Kumar.
Thank you. So I just got an email from David Hughes, who is who's one of the co-chairs of the budget committee, and he was also vice president of the union when we fought for this pay equity process. And he offered a slight correction. The university has 600 million in unrestricted reserves, so it's not running a budget shortfall. But more importantly, he wanted me to mention that in the 29 years that Professor Wolff has been a professor here, and in the 16 years that I have been a professor, Rutgers has actually run budget surpluses. So there is absolutely no reason why the two of us, as well as the other plaintiffs and thousands of others, should have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 20, 30 years. So thank you for that, Dr. Hughes.
Thank you, Professor Kumar. That's certainly important information, of course. And we also know that the university has recently received at least $47 million from selling critical information that was developed, the techniques developed to actually assist with COVID-19, and has already received additional funding restored by the state due to the work of different sections or segments of the workforce coming together and advocating on behalf of the university. And of course, tuition remains the same as well.